You are not broken, even though life may have tried very hard to convince you that you are. Somewhere along the road, after disappointments stacked up and expectations fell apart, you started to believe that something inside you must be wrong. Every failure felt like proof. Every rejection felt like confirmation. But that belief didn't come from truth. It came from exhaustion, comparison, and pain that stayed too long without being understood. From the moment you were young, the world handed you a checklist. Be faster, be smarter, be calmer, be stronger, be more successful by this age, be healed already. And when you didn't meet those timelines, you didn't question the list, you questioned yourself. You began to see growth as repair work, as if you were a damaged machine instead of a human being in motion. But growth has never been about fixing something broken. Growth exists because you are alive. Only living things grow. Think about this carefully. Nothing that is broken continues to evolve on its own. Broken things stop. They fall apart. They lose function. But you didn't stop. You adapted. You learned how to survive seasons you were never trained for. You adjusted your dreams when life hit harder than expected. You became wiser, not weaker. That's not brokenness, that's resilience. You mistake struggle for failure because no one taught you that struggle is part of becoming. You think pain means you did something wrong, when sometimes pain is simply the cost of caring deeply. You think setbacks mean you lack ability, when often they mean you're being prepared for responsibility you haven't reached yet. If you were truly broken, you wouldn't still be searching for meaning. You wouldn't still be trying to improve. You wouldn't still care. Growth does not come from self-hate. It never has. Real growth comes from awareness. From seeing yourself clearly, without cruelty. From saying, I have room to improve, instead of, I am not enough. There is a massive difference between discipline and punishment. One builds you. The other destroys you slowly while pretending to help. You've been carrying guilt for not being further ahead, but you ignore how far you've already come. You compare your behind the scenes to someone else's final result and call yourself incomplete. But timing is not a measure of worth. Flowers don't bloom at the same time, and none of them apologize for it. They grow when their season arrives. The lie that you are broken keeps you chasing approval. It keeps you buying into endless self-fixing, as if peace is always one step ahead but never here. And while you're busy correcting yourself, you forget to appreciate yourself. You forget that you've already survived things you once thought would end you. You forget that endurance itself is a form of strength. You are allowed to evolve without treating your past self like an enemy. That version of you is doing the best they could with the information and tools they had at the time. Shame doesn't make you better. Compassion does. When you understand that, your growth becomes sustainable instead of exhausting. Being enough does not mean staying the same. It means recognizing that your value was never dependent on perfection. You are not a project that needs constant repair. You are a person learning through experience. Every lesson you've learned, every mistake you've made, every time you fell and stood back up, those are signs of development, not defects. When you stop seeing yourself as broken, something powerful happens. You stop rushing. You stop begging for validation. You stop measuring your worth through outcomes alone. You begin to build from confidence instead of fear. And when growth comes from confidence, it lasts. You don't need to be fixed to be worthy of respect, love, or success. You need to be honest about where you are and patient with where you're going. Growth is not an apology for existing. It is a celebration of potential unfolding in real time. You were never broken. You were becoming. You've been told that if you really want to grow, you have to be hard on yourself. That discipline means pressure. That improvement requires criticism. That if you're not constantly pointing out your flaws, you're being lazy or delusional. So you learn to motivate yourself through self-rejection. You talk to yourself in ways you would never talk to someone you love. You focus more on what you lack than on what you've built. And you call that self-improvement. But that's not growth. That's quiet destruction. There is a dangerous misunderstanding in the way people approach becoming better. They believe that to move forward, they must first tear themselves apart. They think progress begins with disapproval. But real self-improvement does not come from telling yourself you're not enough. It comes from believing you are enough to deserve better habits, better boundaries, and better decisions. When you reject yourself, you don't grow faster, you grow heavier. Every goal feels like punishment. Every mistake feels like proof you were right to doubt yourself. And even when you succeed, it never feels like enough because the voice driving you forward is never satisfied. That voice always wants more, faster, louder, bigger. It doesn't celebrate progress. It only moves the finish line. Self-improvement rooted in self-respect feels different. It's firm, but it's not cruel. It holds you accountable without tearing down your identity. It says, you can do better, without saying, you are worthless until you do. That distinction changes everything. One approach builds confidence. The other builds anxiety. You don't become disciplined by hating who you are today. You become disciplined by caring enough about yourself to show up consistently. Think about it. The people who improve the most over time are not the ones fueled by shame. They're the ones fueled by belief. They believe their effort matters. They believe their future is worth the work, and belief is sustainable. Shame is not. When self-rejection is your motivator, rest feels like weakness. Slowing down feels like failure. Asking for help feels like incompetence. So you push harder, not smarter. You burn out, then blame yourself for being tired. You lose joy, then criticize yourself for lacking passion. You're stuck in a cycle where improvement never brings peace, only temporary relief before the next wave of pressure hits. But when self-improvement comes from acceptance, you don't fear mistakes as much. You see them as feedback, not verdicts. You correct your behavior without attacking your character. You say, that didn't work, let's adjust, instead of, I always mess things up. And that mindset keeps you moving forward instead of freezing in self-doubt. You are allowed to want more for yourself without believing you are less right now. Wanting growth does not mean rejecting the present version of you. It means honoring them enough to guide them forward. The current you is not the enemy. The current you is the foundation. Many people never reach their potential not because they lack ability, but because they are exhausted from fighting themselves. They're constantly at war internally, trying to outrun a feeling of inadequacy that never goes away. But improvement doesn't require war. It requires alignment. When you align self-improvement with self-respect, your standards stay high, but your inner dialogue changes. You still work hard. You still push yourself, but you do it from a place of purpose, not punishment. You don't need to break yourself to build yourself. The moment you stop rejecting yourself is the moment progress becomes lighter, clearer, and more honest. You stop proving your worth and start expressing. If you've been carrying your past like a verdict, as if every mistake you made permanently stamped your future, every wrong decision, every missed opportunity, every moment you wish you could redo keeps replaying in your mind, quietly whispering that you are limited by what has already happened. And over time, you start believing that your history defines your value. But your past was never meant to be a prison. It was meant to be a classroom. Most people don't realize how much weight they give to yesterday. They wake up with today's responsibilities, but yesterday's guilt. They try to move forward while dragging regret behind them, wondering why progress feels so heavy. The truth is, you can't build a new life while constantly sentencing yourself for an old one. Accountability is healthy. Self-condemnation is not. You did not always know what you know now. You did not always have the maturity, discipline, or awareness you have today. Judging your past self with your current wisdom is unfair, yet that's exactly what you do. You call it honesty, but it's actually cruelty. That version of you was navigating life with limited tools, under pressure, often in pain, often alone, and still they survived. That matters. Failure is not a character flaw. It's a data point. It tells you what doesn't work, what needs adjustment, and where growth is required. But when you turn failure into identity, you stop learning from it. Instead of saying, I failed, you say, I am a failure. And that small shift in language changes how you see yourself, how you act, and what you believe is possible. Pain works the same way. Pain is not proof that you are weak. It's proof that you cared, that you tried, that you were involved in something meaningful. If you were numb, there would be no pain. The goal was never to avoid pain completely. It was to grow through it without letting it harden you or define you. You don't erase your past to move forward. You integrate it. You extract the lesson without keeping the shame. You keep the wisdom without reliving the wound. When you do that, your past stops chasing you and starts guiding you. What once hurt you becomes something that strengthens your discernment, your boundaries, and your empathy. There are people who never heal because they keep reopening old chapters, reading them with anger instead of understanding. They don't realize that closure is not about forgetting. It's about no longer needing to punish yourself for what you've already paid for through experience. The moment you forgive yourself, not excuse, but forgive, you reclaim energy that has been locked in regret. That energy can finally be used to build instead of blame. Self-forgiveness is not weakness, it's responsibility. It says, I acknowledge what happened, I learned from it, and I refuse to let it steal my future. Your past explains you, but it does not limit you. It shows where you've been, not where you must stay. Every meaningful transformation requires a decision to stop living as a summary of mistakes and start living as a work in progress. Some of the strongest people you admire have failed publicly, fallen hard, and started again quietly. What separates them from those who stay stuck is not talent, it's perspective. They use their past as fuel, not chains. You are not behind because of your past. You are prepared because of it. The lessons you learned the hard way are shaping the discipline, patience, and clarity you need next. Nothing was wasted unless you refuse to learn from it. When you stop letting your past define your value, you move with freedom. You take risks without fear of repeating old mistakes. You trust yourself more because you know you can recover, and that confidence changes everything. Your story didn't end where you fell. It evolved, and it's still being written. And that's when improvement, final acceptance, is not giving up on yourself, and it is not lowering your standards. Acceptance is the moment you stop fighting who you are long enough to finally use who you are. Too many people believe strength comes from constant resistance, from pushing, forcing, and denying their reality. But real strength begins when you tell the truth about where you are without judging yourself for being there. When you don't accept yourself, everything feels like a struggle. You chase validation because you don't trust your own worth. You overwork because rest feels undeserved. You overexplain because you're afraid of being misunderstood. And underneath all that effort is fear. Fear that if you slow down, someone will discover you're not enough. That fear drains your energy before life even gets difficult. Self-acceptance changes the foundation you stand on. Instead of building your life on anxiety, you build it on clarity. You no longer wake up trying to prove yourself. You wake up trying to improve yourself. There is a huge difference. One is driven by insecurity. The other is driven by purpose. When you accept yourself, your decisions become cleaner. You stop saying yes to things that betray your values. You stop shrinking to make other people comfortable. You stop performing versions of yourself that were never sustainable. Acceptance gives you permission to be honest, and honesty creates alignment between who you are and how you live. Strength does not come from pretending you don't have flaws. It comes from knowing your flaws and not letting them control you. When you accept your limitations, you can work around them. When you deny them, they work against you. Awareness is power, but only when it's paired with compassion. Many people stay stuck because they confuse acceptance with complacency. They think if they accept themselves, they'll stop growing. But they becomes what it was meant to be. Not you don't find peace by becoming someone else. You find it by finally standing in who you already are without apology. The moment you stop trying to fix yourself, you stop bleeding energy into shame, comparison, and self-doubt. That energy returns to you as focus, discipline, and clarity. From that place, growth becomes natural instead of forced. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be present, accountable, and evolving. Every lesson you've learned, every scar you carry, every strength you've built along the way has been shaping you for what's next. Nothing about your journey has been wasted. When you accept yourself, respect yourself, and move forward with intention, you step into real power. Not loud power, not performative power, quiet power. The kind that doesn't need permission or applause. The kind that builds consistently and lasts. You are already enough. And from that truth, everything else can be built. A correction of your existence, but an expansion of your potential.